On July 18, 2007, Barbara Bolek, 55, disappeared without a trace from the Bear Creek Lookout, an area where she had long climbed and practiced. She was accompanied that day by a guest named Jim, who later told authorities that she had quietly disappeared when he briefly looked away. No trace of Barbara or any evidence of what happened to her has ever been found. But how and why did Barbara suddenly disappear from a trail she had climbed countless times, both alone and with others? The trail was made up of rocks of varying sizes, making a silent fall or abduction difficult, if not impossible. Barbara Asanta met Carl Bolek, the man who would become her husband, in New Jersey while he was still in the Air Force. He later worked for J.P. Morgan Chase in New York City. After retiring, the couple moved to Corvallis, Montana, in 2001. Carl was a native of Montana, but his wife had never lived there. However, Barbara, an avid hiker, came to love her new home and soon began taking long hikes in the nearby Bitterroot Valley. "This is where I want to be," she told her husband. Always cautious, Barbara would carry a backpack with food and water and a .357 Magnum for protection. Montana is home to a variety of wildlife, including bears, mountain jaguars, rattlesnakes, and elk. Her fear of heights also made her avoid getting too close to any cliffs she encountered during these hikes. At the time of her disappearance, Barbara was taking flying lessons and was excited to get her license. In addition, she was learning how to ski. According to Carl, his wife was very happy with their life together and had no real complaints. In July 2007, Carl's cousin, Donna Bayless, visited Montana and brought along her 58-year-old boyfriend, Jim Ramkier. Barbara always enjoyed taking guests on hikes to show them the scenery. Carl stopped accompanying her after suffering a heart attack. The plan for July 18, 2007, was for Barbara, Donna, and Jim to go on a hike to Barbara's favorite mountain trail, Bear Creek Lookout, a 2.6-mile moderately challenging trail near Victor, Montana. It was about a 15-minute drive from the Bolek house. But when Donna woke up that morning, she found herself hungover from the drinks she had had the night before and decided it wouldn't be a good idea to go for a walk. However, Barbara and Jim still wanted to go, so at about 8:30 or 9 a.m., Barbara woke Carl up and told him that she was taking Jim to the lookout and that they would be back later. Carl reassured her that he would take care of making dinner. However, Carl didn't know that he would never see his wife again. When it was noon, Donna began to worry that Barbara and Jim hadn't returned yet. Carl, on the other hand, knew that his wife was an experienced hiker and was very familiar with the trail they were scheduled to hike that day, so he reassured his cousin that there was no need to worry and that they would probably be back any minute. However, when there was no sign of them after an hour, Donna began to panic and suggested that Carl call someone. He was about to do so when the phone rang around 2 p.m. He remembered picking up the phone and hearing an unfamiliar voice on the other end. "It was a Forest Service officer," Carl said. "He asked me if my wife's name was Barbara, and I immediately thought something terrible had happened." Unfortunately, he learned that Jim had reported Barbara missing. Carl immediately drove to the location, hoping that his wife would be found by the time he arrived, but was disappointed to discover that this was not the case. Jim Ramkier's description of his final moments: according to Jim Ramkier, he and Barbara hiked the entire trail to Bear Creek Lookout and then stopped for a bite to eat. They met two other young hikers at the time and the group talked for about a half hour while enjoying the scenery together. It is not known exactly when the two young men left or how far they were from Jim and Barbara, but Jim stated that he and Barbara started to head back around 11:30 a.m. At some point, Jim stopped to look around. He said he did so for no more than 45 seconds before turning back and finding that Barbara, who had been 20 to 30 feet ahead of him, was no longer there. Accounts vary as to when exactly this happened, with her disappearance occurring sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m., a relatively large time frame. "When I returned to continue down, I no longer saw Barbara." Jim explained that his next step was to search the area around Barbara, calling out for her. However, he received no response and saw no sign of Barbara or her bag. According to him, it was as if she had vanished into thin air. He returned to the trailhead and found construction workers there. The road leading to the trailhead had been closed for maintenance that day. It is unclear exactly when the workers arrived, but when Jim encountered them, he asked them if they had seen Barbara and gave a brief description of her. They had not seen her but recalled seeing two young men with a black and white dog leaving the trail earlier. Jim reported her missing shortly thereafter, and the search for Barbara Bolek began in earnest. Carl remained at the Bear Creek Lookout until midnight, desperate to find Barbara. He was encouraged to go home and rest, which he eventually did. The next day, he returned with a group of friends and neighbors who wanted to help him search for her. In the following days, several search and rescue teams, accompanied by trained dogs, were organized to search for Barbara Bolek. Aircraft equipped with infrared and thermal imaging technology were also used. Curiously, nothing was ever found. Not only was Barbara missing, but no evidence that she was on the trail that day was found. The dogs were unable to pick up her scent anywhere. After 2 weeks of intensive searching and investigation, Ravalli County Sheriff Chris Hoffman said Barbara Bolek's disappearance was a mystery. "We're at a loss," Hoffman told the Bitterroot Star. "We've searched the area around the disappearance pretty well. There's been no trace at all. We'd like to see if we can find out if Bolek was on the mountain that day." Jim told police about the 2 men he met on the trail, and authorities have been trying to locate them, unsure if they were locals or tourists. To this day, they have never been found or identified. While it may seem strange or even suspicious that they did not come forward, it is also important to note that Barbara's case did not receive much media attention, and it is possible that they were, and still are, unaware that she was missing, especially if they did not live in the area. Investigators were hoping to interview the 2 men who allegedly met Barbara on the trail, in order to help confirm that she had reached the mountain that day. Now let's get into the theories surrounding Barbara Bolek's disappearance. Many have found it strange that Jim didn't hear anything unusual on the day Barbara disappeared. There are a lot of rocks of varying sizes around the Bear Creek Trail, making it difficult, if not impossible, to move quietly. Lead investigator Penny Johnson said, "It's hard to sneak quietly through the loose Chilean rock. There's going to be some noise. Just the fact that someone disappears like that is cause for concern. If Barbara had been attacked by a wild animal, you would expect to see some evidence of that in the area. It's possible that Jim would have heard screams or sounds of struggle." It has also been suggested that Barbara may have fallen suddenly and not had a chance to call for help. However, her fear of heights made her particularly cautious around them. Additionally, this was her favorite trail and she was very familiar with it. However, it is possible that she unexpectedly slipped and got stuck in a crevice or cave. Although it is strange that an extensive search was unable to find any trace of her or her hiking gear. As often happens in missing persons cases, police initially wondered if Barbara had decided to leave her life behind and start a new one somewhere else. As with other theories, there was nothing to support this either. In addition to the fact that she seemed very content with her life, she left behind her wallet, ID, passport, and other valuables, as well as her beloved dog and cat. Barbara and Carl had also planned an upcoming fall trip to the Mexican Riviera that they were both excited about. Others have speculated that this might have been a crime. Jim was the last person known to have seen Barbara. Did he do something to her? Could he have hidden her body so well in an unfamiliar area that it would never be found? Another possibility in this scenario, which could explain why the search dogs couldn't find any trace of Barbara's scent, is that something happened before they reached the trailhead that day. They took Jim's rental car to the Bitterroot Valley, but did Barbara make it there? Probably not. However, it is not clear what Jim's motive would have been. One might also assume that Jim would have concocted a more convincing story if he had been responsible for Barbara's disappearance. He cooperated with law enforcement from the beginning and even volunteered to take a lie detector test, although they did not accept his offer. Ultimately, the police cleared Jim Ramkier of any suspicion. The police received numerous tips during the investigation, none of which were helpful, while some seemed to fit the bizarre nature of the case. For example, an anonymous caller called to say that Barbara had been abducted by a ghost mountain man. Given its status as a missing 411 case, meaning people who go missing in national parks or other wilderness areas, David Polita, author of several books on the subject, was asked to weigh in. "I know the case very well. I actually interviewed the man she was with. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. Some people think it was purely a crime. I haven't formed an opinion yet." Carl Bolek was deeply frustrated by Barbara's mysterious disappearance. He found it difficult to eat or sleep for weeks, and ended up losing a significant amount of weight that summer. Years later, he described his thoughts. "I couldn't accept it. I just knew it was going to show up, one way or another, but it didn't. It still doesn't. I don't have the answers. I wish I had them. There's nothing." That's what's so confusing. The loss of his wife made Carl overthink his actions during his marriage, wondering if he had taken her for granted. You say, "Oh my God, why did I do that? Why wasn't I more careful?" While Jim Ramkier remained cooperative with law enforcement, he and Donna soon grew apart from Carl. Sadly, Carl Bolek passed away in 2021 at the age of 80. Detective Johnson later hopes to solve the mystery of the disappearance. This whole case challenges our experience of life. Whenever we go hiking, we expect to get back to our vehicle with our hiking partners. We don't think about it. That's just the way it is. To this day, no evidence has been discovered related to Barbara Bolek's disappearance. The truth about what happened to her, the woman who seemed to vanish without a trace on that distant July day, remains a mystery. Here we have reached the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe.